Hello, my name is Yurii. I am a JavaScript developer here at Binary Studio. This is a lecture about React Native, a framework which allows you to build native Android and iOS applications. Good news, if you know React Web, you might already know React Native. But as always, there is a but. And today we're going to try to understand what is the difference and what is the main idea of React Native while creating a clone of one of the most popular applications in the world. So let's get started with React Native. This is a framework which allows you to build native applications using JavaScript, and most of the knowledge of React Web are relevant to React Native. First, I would like to clarify what React Native is not. This is not a web application that can be run on a mobile device. This is also not a hybrid approach when a web application is wrapped into native web view. We have JavaScript side and the main side. Main side means Kotlin or Java, Objective-C or Swift. React Native calls native APIs to render components through the asynchronous bridge. This means that the JavaScript thread can be blocked, but not the interaction with the UI. To get started with React Native, you need to open the documentation, and here you will have two tabs, Expo CLI and React Native CLI. So what is the Expo? It is an SDK, a set of libraries, that allows you to use native functionality without having to install Android Studio or Xcode. Only JavaScript file will be available for you, and therefore it is impossible to connect some third-party libraries that depends on the native side during installation. Other JavaScript libraries that do not depend on the native side, for example Xsource or Moment.js, can be installed without a problem. Another disadvantage here is that you depend on the Expo team, and it will be possible to use the latest React Native release only when Expo is updated. So Expo option is ideal when you need an MVP and there is no time to raise a development environment, or if you are sure that Expo can provide the functionality that your application needs. I recommend using React Native CLI, and this is what we're gonna use during this lecture. Here, the process of raising the development environment depends on your operating system. If you have macOS, then you can run the application both on iOS and on the Android. If you have Windows or Linux, the only Android option is available for you. Basically, there should not be any problem or pitfalls with this. Everything is described in very sufficient detail, and you just need to go step by step and install all the dependencies and SDKs. A common step, regardless of the platform or operating system, is installation of the React Native CLI. It needs to be installed globally, and then run React Native init and enter your application's name. In Android Studio, you will need to open only the Android folder, and if you need to deal with the iOS project in Xcode, you will need the iOS folder. You may write JavaScript file in any editor of your choice. What is the difference between React Web and React Native? Well, first the components. There are no usual div, span, input, form. In React Web we have global components, but in React Native we have components which must be imported from React Native library itself. Handling styles is also a bit different. Basically, there is no CSS, no browser or DOM API, no canvas, CSS animation, etc. On the other hand, we have unitless numbers, which is very convenient considering the variety of devices. From the web, there are fetch, console log, timers, these are polyfills in our case, and navigation also works differently, but we will cover this in detail a bit later. Events. So not every component can be clickable or rather touchable in React Native. On the web, we can put a click event listener on any div or component and it works perfectly. On React Native, we have special components for this, like touchable opacity, touchable highlight, and touchable without feedback. From their name, you might get their purposes, and they differ only in the way they provide feedback for the user. Handlers also often receive different arguments, so please check the documentation before use. Basically, the first point about touch event handlers is not 100% true, because there is such a thing as a gesture responsive system, and it allows you to implement the onPress method on almost any component. Okay, let's see how it works in reality, and I have already prepared an app starter, and all we have to do is install it to our emulator. Firstly, we have to npm start. This will start our server, and then we run React Native run Android. It will install our app to the Android emulator. Okay, let's see what's happening in our code. As we can see, there's an Android folder, iOS folder, some files. All of these are created by React Native for us, except for the app folder. This one was created by me. So let's open our root component, sign up view, and go to its render method. As we can see, we have a view component, which is the wrapper for all internal components. And here is a style prop, and we are passing some object, styles.container. But styles are created in some strange way, some kind of style sheet create. So why is it here? Why not just pass the simple object? Actually, you can do so. So for example, let's change it for, let's create border color red and border width. And in order to see the changes, we have to reload our app. To do so, we have to press the debug menu, open the debug menu of the emulator by pressing Ctrl M in this case. And here we have the first item is reload, but also we can debug.js in Chrome, DevTools, live reload, hot reloading. Also we have a toggle inspector here, so we can see all the margins and paddings for elements on the view. The difference from the web is that we cannot change them live. There is a library to do so, but we will not cover them in our talk. So let's go for reload. And as we can see, the styles have changed. However, our layout is a bit broken. Now this is because we took away our container styles. And if you can see, these align items and justify content, they are very familiar, should be to you. They are from Flexbox layout, but the only difference from the web is that flex direction is column by default here. And in terms of style, this is almost it. The only thing remain to explain is why the styles are passed in such a way, while style should create, and where did it come from. Well, style sheet is imported from React Native as all other components, and this is done in order to send the styles only once through the bridge to the native side. So style sheet create optimizes everything for us and sends our styles only once. But if we want to have some dynamic styling, in that case we have to pass the several style objects. So the first one will be our container styles, and the second one we can create our custom styling here. So let's add our border values here. Okay, save. Let's reload. Yeah, and it works. The only thing that is left, let's add flex 1 just to stretch the whole view to the full height of the screen. Okay, reload, and yeah, perfect. Okay, let's move on. What also we have here? Text input. It has style property, value. We keep our value within the state and set it within onChangeText method. So whenever we enter something into this field, this method on email change sets our state. Also, we have placeholder for text input, and what else? Button. It has a title prop and a disabled prop. So in our case, when we send a request to the server and it hasn't been resolved yet, then we make the button disabled. And also we have a login. Login text, we wrapped it within the touchable opacity so that we can have this this text that can be tapped. And but nothing is happening here so far. And sign up can be done. However, we will still not see anything. Perhaps you might guess why, and that's because we don't have any navigation set up. So let's talk about how we should handle navigation within React Native, and for that, let's implement navigating from the sign up to the login screen. It is obviously that navigation on mobile application is different from navigation on the web. Mobile doesn't use URLs for navigation, so it is not possible to take a library from React Web and just use it. React Native also has no navigation out of the box. It had in early versions, but the community didn't accept it. And therefore the community started to offer other solutions. Android and iOS have completely different APIs for navigation. That's why there are essentially two types of libraries. Those that are wrappers for native APIs and those that implement navigation entirely in JavaScript. We will use a library called React Navigation, which has already become the de facto standard in the world of React Native. And all the logic is implemented in JavaScript here. So let's go ahead and install this. First of all, we have to install npm packages. We'll need React Navigation and React Native Gesture Handler. Like this, and but this is not enough, and also we need to make changes to the main activity file for Android to work. So we just copy this sample, and this is it. Okay, this should be enough. So let's talk about what types of navigation exist on mobile. The first type of navigation we will look at is the stack navigator. So in that case, during navigation, each screen is placed at the top of the previous one. And we have the opportunity to use so-called back button, so you can return to the previous screen. In other words, we remove screen from the stack, but you can also make screen replacement. Accordingly, the state of components remains in the memory as long as the screen is in stack. And stack navigator is just what we need for our login and sign up screens logic. By default, we will return the login screen, and if the user doesn't have any account, we give him the opportunity to navigate to the sign up screen. And users can return to the login screen again as well. It would be nice to add such an option. So let's get started and let's see what should be done for this. So we need to go to the root folder and add stack navigator folder. But because this won't be our only navigator, we also add alt navigator within this folder, like this. And I've already prepared the sample of code, so let's paste it here. And within the index file, we just export our alt navigator for now. And let's now move to our root component, and instead of the sign up view, we will import the Auth navigator that we just created and replace sign up view within the render method to the Auth navigator. This is it. Okay. So what actually this createStack navigator do? Basically, createStack navigator is a hook which accepts object representing our roots we want to create, and each field represents a single root. We have a screen prop, and we also can pass navigation options. We may also pass the component just like this. So we're passing login view here. It will work, but in that case we want to pass additional options like header. So we'll go for the object notation in that case. And because this is the only navigation in our app for the moment, we will need to wrap it with the create app container. Okay, let's implement navigation itself. Let's open our login view. And on sign up press, we want the user to be redirected to the sign up view. So now we have this navigation prop within our props. This is what React Navigation gives us. So we just use it, navigation, navigate, and we pass the root name. In our case, it should be sign up. So we're pressing sign up button and take user to the sign up screen. And also let's duplicate this logic to the sign up view. In that case, we have an onLogin press method, and we want the user to be redirected to the login screen. But in that case, instead of navigate method, we'll use go back, so that our unused screen will be removed from the stack. In that case, it would be a better practice. Let's check this, save. Okay, let's save it, reload, and yeah, it works. Okay, our next step will be to check if the user has a token, and if yes, then navigate them inside our app to internal screens. So let's uncomment this code, import from Redux, and connect. Okay. So on component did mount, we'll check if we already have a token. And what's next? And as a next step, let's take a look at other type of navigation, which is called switch navigator. Actually, it displays only one screen, and the user can switch between one or another screen. State is not saved, which means there is no way to do go back action. All you can do is navigate between screens. The option is perfect for us to navigate from the login screen to inside the application, and we won't be able to return to the screen using back navigation once again. So let's implement this. So to implement what we intended, we need to make use of component did mount and component did update. On component did mount, we'll check the moment when the user was already logged in, return to the application, and component did mount will fire. And in that case, if there is a token, then we'll let them inside the application. If not, then navigate them to the login screen. On component update, we can handle two cases. When the user is already within the app and they press the logout button, then the token disappears, so user must be navigated to the login screen. If we are on the login screen and we still don't have the token, but we have just awaited it from the server, and at this moment we need to drag them inside the app. So let's add this logic. I've prepared some sample of codes, so let me paste it here. And component did update. Okay, so now I have to create Switch Navigator itself. So let's go back to the routes folder and add a subfolder for Switch Navigator. So basically the notation is pretty much similar to the Stack Navigator. We have a similar method with slightly different name. Now it's called create Switch Navigator, and we have two main routes, it's home and auth. And also we will wrap it into the create app container. And for the home, we will, for now, return the profile view, and for auth route, we will return the whole navigator, our auth navigator. And as long as we have Switch Navigator on the higher level, we may remove the create app container from the auth navigator. And let's export our Switch Navigator. So it seems like we may already test our app, but actually we can't for now. And why? Because we make use of navigate prop here, but we don't have this prop on that level, because actually app navigator is lower down the tree. So how to deal with this? Actually, the solution is pretty simple. We just make use of the ref and a simple navigation service that we will create. And let's change navigation for props to use our navigation service. And actually, what we do here is we are setting the ref and then importing the navigation action and dispatching them via that ref. Okay, but we have different routes names. Let's fix that. Here we named it main, but within the navigator we called it home. Okay, that's better. Okay, save, reload. But one more little thing. For now, profile view return the null, so let's add a simple placeholder, so we are sure that we are so we have been navigating to the profile. And now we are ready to test. Okay, reload. Let's enter some email, some password. And that's it. Okay, perfect. And now we have to add the ability to navigate between the main screens of our app. And for such type of navigation, we will need a tab navigator. So it offers us tab components out of the box and allows to switch between the screens without losing their state. So let's go back to the root folder and create a tab navigator. Let me paste the code here. And now, instead of returning just profile component to the main root, we will pass the whole tab navigator here. And we don't need this anymore. So here everything is pretty much the same as we did before. We have a hook, it is called the create bottom tab navigator. We have our roots, we have our screen components, and we have an ability to add icons to that tabs. And to do so, let's open the icon component, and we'll make use of React Native vector icons library. So let's go ahead and install it. Firstly, we'll install npm package, but we also need to add some native code to our build Gradle, so that our icons will be copied during the build phase into the Android folder. And don't forget, as long as we have installed the library with native dependencies, we have to reinstall our app. So let's delete it and React Native Run Android once again. Okay, let's log in and let's see what we got. Perfect. Now we have our bottom tab navigations, and our components are changing their appearances when we tap on them. And this is because these navigation options for tab navigator have that focused prop, which you may use to change the icons or to apply some custom styles in different states. But there is still one more problem remains. If we now exit the application and we seem to check whether we have the token, and we remember we were logged in, but now we get to the login screen once again. And this happens because Redux store becomes empty when you exit the app. Therefore, what is the way out of the situation? Well, there is async storage. Async storage is an API in React Native for persistent on-device storage. You can compare it in some way to the local storage on the web. So let's take a look at this library. It used to be the part of React Native itself, but now it has its own repository. And again, let's install npm package. And add a simple service to handle all the process. So we have an apps namespace here just to distinguish our data from the others app data, because all the data in the async storage is publicly available. And we have two methods, set item and get item. We have to remember that all the data that we store into async storage have to be strings, nothing else. Let's change our logic here a bit. And on completed mount, we'll get the token out from the async storage. And keep the rest of our logic the same. Again, this is a native side dependent library, so we have to reinstall our app once again. Let's do this quickly and check if everything works. Okay, React Native says everything is broken, and it's broken because of the wrong imports. Let's fix it. Reload. Let's log in. Okay, now kill our app, relaunch. And we are back into the app. Okay, everything works. But agree that in the future you'll probably have to store more than one token, so you would have to write some kind of middleware which will handle this whole process. And plus you could notice that we have that flash at the start, so when we launch the app, for one moment we see that login screen and then we get to the app. So we will need to change whether the store is already loaded and whether it is possible to navigate to the application. But there is a better solution here. We can make the use of the React Native Redux persist library. So let's install it. And here we have a simple config from the documentation. And let's use persist gate to wrap our whole app. And here's also we have that loading prop, which we may use for passing some kind of loader indicator. But for now, this is enough for us. And now let's reinstall the app once again, but not because we have added the native dependent library, but just because we have that token stored in async storage. And the simplest way to get rid of it, just to reinstall the app. Also, let's change our logic for retrieving the token. And let's check. Okay, let's log in. And again, logged in successfully. Everything works as expected. Perfect. Our next topic is list. When the height of the content is higher than the height of the screen, you want to see a scroll, so you will need to use one of the scrollable components. And let's take a look at our search view here. So you can type in some username, and here will be a list of users presented. Let's start with the scroll view component, which we have to import from React Native. And it's basically pretty simple. We have to pass the children, and we just render touchable opacity for each child, basically to represent each user. We have to pass a unique ID here as a key, and some information about the user. So let's create some of fake users for us and see how it works. Let's start with 25 users. And we'll set our state upon the response from the server. Okay, let's save, reload, and check how it works. Entering just random name, we don't care right now, and our users are there. Okay, let's increase this number a bit and see if everything's fine. Reload. Okay, let's enter some name once again. And this time it's taking much longer. Okay, here we are. Let's go back to the home page, then return to the search view, and they're still there. This is because we are using tab navigator, and our state is saved during the navigation. But what if we want to set the users when this screen becomes focused? So how do we achieve this? We have to use navigation events from React Navigation Library and use onWillFocus method here. So we will just set our fake users to the state every time screen becomes in focus. And let's see how it works now. Let's save. And reload our app. And now when we click on the search view tab, our app is handling. Yes, our users are there, but when we go back and go to the search view again, the on will focus fires, and we are setting our state once again. And this is how scroll view works actually, because all the components must be rendered before they can be displayed on the view. And to overcome this with a big amount of data, there is a flat list component, also a scrollable component, which has a slightly bit different API. So let's import it from React Native and refactor our code a bit. We have to pass data prop. This is our users to render. Also, we have to pass the key extractor. What it does, it actually extracts the key from one of the data fields, so we don't have to set this key manually to each child. And also we have to pass the render item method. We will leave it the same, just extract item here, and we don't need scroll view anymore. Let's save it and check. Okay, reloading. Press the tab view, and all of our users are there. So how is that possible? In fact, well, React flatlist renders only what is in the current viewport, and components that are not visible can be unmounted. Therefore, you need to be careful. If your components from below have any state, you can lose it actually. Another thing to keep in mind about flatlist is that its item is re-rendered only when its props change. To display this, let's try to add a button that will set a new state with a reversed array of users. And we will add a number to each child so that we see if everything changed. Let's import the button component from React Native. Let's reload it. Okay, let's reverse. And nothing happens. Why so? Because you might guess, actually, reverse method of array method is actually um, returning a reference to the same mutated array, not the new one. Therefore, and fix is pretty simple. We just have to return a new array. Let's save, reload our app, and test it once again. And now it works as expected. Okay. Now we are gonna add the ability to switch to the user profile when clicked, and we will use the same component for both our personal profile and for the other user profile. Uh, so that we can select some user from this list and go to their profile. So let's change our search view into the search navigator and return this navigator instead of returning just search view on the search tab. And let's add our profile logic. I will just paste prepared code. So basically nothing new here. The only new props to the flat list is horizontal and number of columns, num columns. This is done in order to display our photos not in the regular list, but in the rows. But we want them to be displayed in columns, and it works only with horizontal false. So let's see if we succeeded. Let's reload our app. Okay, we have an error saying that search navigator could not be found. Okay, just misspelling here. Let's save it and reload once again. And let's find our user. And here's our profile rendered. So we see some information. Edit profile is not implemented yet. We can see our photos displayed in columns the way we wanted it. And if we, for example, go search for a other user name, for example, let's search for Bulka, and instead of edit profile, we have that follow button, so that we can follow this user or message him. And the logic is pretty simple here. We just check within the render method if this user's UUID is the same as our own. If it's yes, we display edit profile button and log out. If not, then we display that follow button and message. You might also notice that when we go to the profile user's profile through the search, we have that header with the ability to navigate back. But if we go to our own profile via tab navigator, we don't have any header at all. And let's fix this. This is actually done because we return just view for the profile tab. So let's add profile navigator and return it instead of simple view. Okay, let's change it. And saving, reloading, and let's see if we succeeded. Yeah, now we have that header. In the next step, take a look at how to make animations in React Native. So we'll show the model when the user hold their finger on the photo for a long time, but when they release their finger, we'll hide. Let's go to the profile view, and the first thing we need to do is to import the animated library from React Native to set animated value in state. Actually, this the value we will base our animation on top of. So initially, we'll set it to 0. And within the render item, we have our touchable component, which has this press handling method, and we will make use of on long press and on press out. So on long press will show our model, and on press out will hide it. So what is happening here? On show model, we set the desired picture in our state and change the background color of our view, just to distinguish it from the background view, actually. And on hide model, we revert the changes. So to perform the animation, we'll make use of timing method of animated library, and there is also spring and decay, which will present different types of animations, but we will go with timing. And the first value is actually our animated value, and we have also several props here. So duration of the animation, and use native driver, which is default to false, but we set it to true. This means that animations will be performed on the native side, not on the JavaScript side. Because we remember that JavaScript can be blocked and animation may be messed up in that case. You may be wondering why not use everything with native driver set to true, but the fact is that only non-layout properties can make use of native driver. And here, to present our model, we make use of animated view, which has a style prop similar to the general view component, and we pass several style objects here. So the first one will be style sheet absolute fill, which is a predefined object to absolutely position our model and to stretch it to the size. Then our model styles. And the third component is actually the third object. Style object is actually describes our animation itself. So here we have opacity and a transform prop, which describes our animation. And here we'll use interpolate method, because going from 0 to 1 in that case is not very suitable for us. We would rather go from 100 to 0. So interpolate method will handle this for us. And let's check everything once again, save, and see how our animation looks like. So let's reload. And long press, we can see that our model appears, and if we release the finger, it will disappear. So if you just click on the photos, nothing happens. As the next step, let's add an ability to upload the photos and add it to our profiles. To do this, we'll need to make use of React Native image picker library, and basically it allows you to capture photos from camera or pick the images from media library. So let's add additional permissions to the native side. And so we'll have two buttons here, post and cancel. They actually speak for themselves what they do. So the logic is pretty simple. If we don't have any photo in state, if we haven't selected anything yet, then actually we'll try to get it and then send. So let's save our code and see whether it works. Because we installed the library that depends on native side, so we have to reinstall our app. Let's delete it first, and then React Native run Android once again. So let's log in into the app and go to the upload view. And Android asks whether we want to take a photo or choose from the library. Let's select choose from the library as long as we own emulator. So we'll pick from what we have. And here is a permission request. So we have to grant access to the media library and to the camera. So let's choose some photo and try to upload it to our profile. Let's add some description also. And post. Okay, so we have an alert here, and basically the syntax is pretty much the same as on web. So let's go to our profile and see if this photo has been added. So yeah, it is there. So everything works. And let's add some logic to our home view so that we can see the photos of the people we are following. So let's go to home view and let me paste the code. And what is new here? So we have this dimension get window. Actually, dimension, as always, it is an API that React Native gives us. And using this API, we can find out the width and height of the screen and use it, for example, in styles. So the rest is pretty much the same as we did before. So let's save it, log out and log in under the different users' credentials so that we can follow. Let's find a user we want to follow. Okay, let's press follow, then return to our home screen. And here are our photos. So you might have noticed that I use that move from the top to the bottom. Actually, it is a pull to refresh functionality, and it can be implemented with the flat list props. So on refresh, we pass our get post methods, and it will be called during this move. And the final step, let's add an ability to add and view comments by clicking that button. So let's go to our home view, to our comment view, and let me paste the logic for this. So nothing new for you here. And we also need a stack navigator. So here we see we have that array without tab bar, and it's showing that on the road comment we don't want the bottom tab bar to be visible. So we have that simple logic. We check for root name, and if it is included in our tab bar visible, then we return false for tab bar visible prop, and vice versa. So it's pretty simple one. So let's save, and let's add to add comments. Let's just import our home navigator and pass it instead of our home view. Let's save and reload. Okay, let's add some comment. And it just works. Also, I would like to note how this image component works. So we have this source prop here, and there's two options. We can pass an URI and pass a link to the photo with in the internet, or there is another way. You can have image in your assets folder, and for example, this logo is an image, and we just require it by path and send the result to the source prop. So as a result, we managed to create an Instagram clone that implements the basic functionality, and we got known with the basic components, navigations, and animations in React Native. And we see that basically it is not very difficult to work with React Native, but there are features and some points that I must tell you about and which can interfere with the work and bring troubles. The first is lack of cross-platform components, which are styled for Android or iOS platforms. Therefore, you need to use third-party libraries or style it by yourself. The second one is frequent releases that can sometimes basically just break your entire app, and it is difficult to sometimes it's difficult to update your app, and sometimes it's easier to just copy your JavaScript files and create a new application, insert JavaScript file there, and link native libraries if there are any. And actually about libraries, speaking about libraries, as you can see, we used them quite a lot, but not always they're in good condition, not always there is a maintainer. Therefore, it is necessary to keep all this in mind during implementing your app. And this is pretty much it. Thank you for your attention and good luck.